So, welcome to the viewers of Dataquest for another round of video interviews and tech talks and the like. And this time we have with us an absolute veteran of the industry, someone who started his career in 1970 and he has been associated with tech since the 1960s. So, I don't know what more can I say. Introducing Harish Mehta, winner of the Dataquest Lifetime Achievement Award for 2022. Welcome. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Sunil. Yeah.
So I think I'll just get straight to it. So, I mean, it's very difficult to find someone who has seen technology from the 1960s. So you started your education, you were associated with the technology domain in the 1960s, and you were already in leadership roles in the 1970s itself. So for us, I mean, it sounds quite fascinating. So can you tell us something about your life in those days and also what the industry was like, what India would be like? All of us would be very curious to know.
So tell me how much time we have, Sunil.
40 minutes, or I guess we can maybe.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So starting talking about my career, I started as a electrical engineer from College Engineering, Pune. As usual in those days, everyone who completes engineering would go abroad to do their masters. I also ended up landing up at Brooklyn Polytech in New York to do my master's in electrical engineering. My roommate happened to be one graduate from Brooklyn Poly. He had done his computer science. So he said, he's an Indian, and he said, why are you doing electrical? Abhi to computer ka jamana aaya hai. So this is going back to 69, 70. And of course, I didn't know what computer was, and I checked around. Nobody knew in Bombay or Pune. But then whatever I looked at around in the US, I figured out that computer is the way to go. So I changed my career to computer science. So while my degree is in electrical, but still all the courses I took were around computer science. And they were hardcore computer science, meaning you can say in those software didn't exist, frankly. So it was basically hardware design that I got deep into. Then after I graduated, of course, my advisor wanted me to do PhD, which I did try for 3 months and then realized that's not my cup of tea. So I started looking for a job. And it was in the Vietnam War time. So the jobs were not available. I wrote to hundreds of companies and couldn't find one. Finally, after 3 months, I landed up in Hartford, Connecticut with an insurance company where they offered me a job as a COBOL programmer. Now, I don't know how many of you know COBOL language, but it was a very simple English type language to do programming. And there was a saying that you can teach a monkey, and within 1 week, the monkey can write programs in COBOL language. Now, here he is a computer science graduate, so-called, doing programming in COBOL. So that was a job available, and job is a job. So I accepted the job. And after joining the company, luckily I could demonstrate my skills. And they quickly, in Travelers Insurance Company, senior management transferred me to do database work. So they trained me in database technologies. In those days, it was considered most advanced technology in the software. So that's where I got trained as a database manager, became database manager at Travelers Insurance Company. And we tried our best to settle down in USA. I call it Americanize ourselves by getting into a number of things. But somehow it was not working out. I had a green card also. But then we said, let's go back to India. It was emergency in those days. But to us, we wanted to spend time with our family. So that was good enough reason for us to come back to India. So we came back to India. Now, everyone in US has said you'll be back in US in 6 months. When we came to India, everyone said, why have you come? What is it? What is there for anyone in India? I mean, there was no jobs. I mean, it was a very poor condition or situation, as you one would can imagine what India was at that time. But I said, okay, anyway, I'll try to join my dad's business. Didn't succeed. He was in a debt actually, so was and everything film distribution business. I didn't see great potential in that business. My father-in-law had, they still have a two-wheeler parts manufacturing firm. So he said, why don't you make zinc-based nipples for these spokes? And it is your buyer problem, sorry, selling problem is solved. You only worry about buying it and manufacturing it. So he took me to Kanjur Marg in near Ghatkopar to buy a gala, as we call it, to do manufacturing. And I was shocked to seeing the labor conditions there. I said, I have not come back to India to work in such a gala as well as the poor labor conditions. That's not something I would like to do. So at that time, I met Saru Rangnekar, who was a management consultant. And he said, in a small conference where 40, 50 people were there, welcome, Mr. Mehta. Here you'll be a first-class citizen here in a second-class country with the third-class administration. And yours and my job is to fix it. I was quite surprised. Somebody welcoming with a great sense of humor and still conveying very sharply what the reality was. So when I was looking for a job, business, what to do, how and what not, I realized that I should enter maybe technology business. Now, technology didn't exist. There were hardly 50, I don't know, computers in the country. And but then government was encouraging companies to do or import computers to do, but giving some export commitment. Now, a person like me who was a database manager earning in those days, say $25,000 per year, and I was earning X here, there's a 15 times, you can say, labor arbitrage difference between the two. So I saw that as a great opportunity. But there was no communication pipe. So I didn't have access to those computers and those databases to leverage my database skills. So that was a challenge. But then at least there are many other areas which you could do, assuming that either sitting here or sending people abroad and getting the job done. So I said in technology, at that time my cousin said, Harish, you go back to USA. You are a straightforward person. You will not succeed in India. I said, why do you say so? He says, here you do not know whether your competitor is doing income tax story or customs tax story or excise tax story. When you do not know the input cost of your competitor, how are you going to compete? So there was a big shocker to me, the reality of business to do and succeed in India. That's where I came up with an idea of doing a business around technology, because you can't bribe a jump instruction to bypass a certain word. So technology has to deliver a solution. And so that's how I entered the tech business and also the software services business as an export.
What I was saying is that's quite fascinating, because it's a very fascinating journey full of struggles for the technology in India. So as you said, I mean, it was very tough times. You had the Vietnam War, then you had emergency in India, then you had the Janta government. They threw out multinationals, including IBM. But I think by mid 80s and all, that is when Indian IT really took off. You had the National Computer Policy, and computers became a buzzword. So if you can, I'm sure 1980s also must have been a very exciting decade when maybe the Indian IT story really started. So if you could take us back to that decade.
See, partly you are right, but frankly, those of us who are in business, we didn't see any great future for computers.
Okay.
Because the manufacturing was basically an assembly operation. So the real design and manufacturing, what we saw in USA, was 15 years, 20 years. India was behind. So it's a long way to go in that game. Similarly, the government wanted, or let's say, in those days, the scientists were the technology gatekeepers of India, and they wanted us to do software product business. Now, first of all, software was not defined anywhere. So software definition with income tax would be one, software definition with a reserve bank would be another, software definition with excise department would be another, software with customs would be another, all different definitions in terms of, so software was intangible. There was nothing physically you could put your hands around it. So they had tried their best to use the rules of the physical world applied to software, or was intangible. And there are enough horror stories one knows about how bureaucrats would treat software. And then this technology gatekeepers wanted us to do software product game. Now, companies like ours, in those days, we had put a team in Mysore, far away. We had the best of best IIT engineers at that time, excuse me, to do Gemini, database development. And we realized over a year and a half after burning a lot of money that India is not ready for the product game. I mean, we had taken a moonshot, taken a big risk, but we didn't have architectural skills. We didn't have the product engineering skills. We didn't have any testing tools. We even didn't understand the charge as the business model of software product, which we came to know maybe 10 years later, how Silicon Valley was successful in the product game, and compounded that by, we don't believe in copyright. We believe in right to copy. So even if you make a product and sell, will you get protection? So there are lots of reasons where we realize that India is not ready for the product game. Our future, we believe, was in services. But that the technology gatekeepers are not prepared to accept. Now, those of us who are in services, let's say the total pie at that time was, as per IDG or somebody, where Dataquest had a partnership, $300 billion market size, out of which India was at $20-30 million. But we could see hundreds of obstacles in the policy making, processes, and whatnot. If we overcome this pie can become maybe 1 billion or 2 billion. Still not 100, because we needed state-of-the-art computers, state-of-the-art applications, software tools, for us to develop applications where the big market was. But we were nowhere there anyway, closer to it. But there was still sufficient huge low-end market that was accessible to us, which you could do it. So there was a big struggle. And I think I remember somehow counted, and I've listed on one of my website also, 100 plus regulations strangulating the software services game. But we realized if we can find a way to overcome, we can do it. But on the other hand, what is called in those days body shopping was a good business. Sending engineer abroad, let's say masters in science engineer doing work in a company abroad, was fantastic. So there was a good profitable game, very small, but still it was profitable business model for us to do it. And so that's why we succeeded in building up our base from 10 million to 20 million to 50 million. But we couldn't make major breakthroughs. But there was still sufficient for those 30, 40 companies who were involved in the business to continue to grow. So from that point, software services perspective, it started, but we still had a long way to go before we cracked that problem. And that's where the idea of NASSCOM was for forming an association came, whose one of the primary objective would be the lobbying to remove these restrictions. But also we studied all the other associations and we came up with some other critical, or I would say important decisions. In the hindsight, I can say that. To us, it was very natural if we focus on developing the ecosystem and not just the lobbying work as other associations were. But anyway, so all that helped us to bringing all the, let's say, 40 software companies who, in a sense, were fierce competitors to come together under one umbrella and get started.
So that's quite interesting, because you talked of, you're organizing yourself into NASSCOM. So NASSCOM, of course, for everyone, is India's premier tech advocacy and trade association. And you were the first elected chairman there. Now, I would be interested in, can you tell us your role there, how NASSCOM was formed, and the importance of NASSCOM in the last decades? Why I'm saying is because after NASSCOM was formed, you organized and you saw the liberalization era, you saw the internet era, the Y2K era, services, startup. NASSCOM has seen everything. So if you can tell how you formed your role and the last few decades, because actually after that, the story of NASSCOM is the story of Indian IT in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah,
So that also would be a very interesting story.
sure. I mean, see, so this 100 plus regulations sort of strangulating was one challenge. And then we all 40 of us came together and we said, let's form an association. But when we first initially met, we studied, as I just talked about, various other associations, and we defined do's and don'ts for us. So some of the things which first thing we realized was that there was a major, one is of course, policymakers didn't know what is software, what is intangible and all that. The second challenge was there's a major trust deficit between the policymakers and the businessmen. Remember, it was a socialistic license Raj in those days. And they still suffered from what East India Company had done in terms of how the businessmen from India allowed them to come to India and they took over the country. So there's a major trust deficit. Apart from that, a lot of other corruption that was going on at being a license Raj and all. So they didn't trust us. So we said our first job is to build the trust between the policymakers and us. In that process, we took certain decisions. Again, in the hindsight today, I can say, turned out to be what I would call the smart decisions. Like one decision we took was we will not bribe any policy for any policy making, any change in any policy making. Now, it was a very natural decision for us as such, because it was a collective strength. Okay, even if it takes 3 years, that's okay. Sometimes we have to wait 4 years, 5 years before the policy change can happen. But we stuck to our guns, saying no, we need to build trust between us and the policymakers. Then it went to the second stage where we opened our offices, all our meetings. Any bureaucrat was most welcome to attend without invitation. So they were surprised that you want us to come and listen to you. We said, yes, you come and listen to us, then only you'll know what our problems are. We took them to our offices, showed them all the documentation and the way development was happening and the challenges we had at every stage, be it customs level, be it RBI level or whatever. And they were pleasantly surprised to see the real problem. But still there was a trust deficit in spite of all that. I think when Mr. Vittal came in and then when I was the chairperson at that time, we wanted they'd given software export benefit, income tax benefit to all other industries, but not to software services. We were not really considered as a significant, and they gave it to us for 1 year and and within 1 year you can't even plan anything. So he came back to us saying that if you can do $400 million by end of the year, this benefit will be extended for a long period. Now we were at maybe, I don't know, say 150. So we all sat together and we said, can we do it? We said, we can't even do more than 200. So went back to Mr. Vittal saying, sir, we can't do it. He said, you don't want the benefit. We said, no, sir, we want the benefit, but we don't want to mislead you. We don't want to. But he said, but here is a MATE report which says they can do it. Here is the Software Export Promotion Council. Their report, they said they can do it. How come you guys can't do it? Now, when we started NASSCOM, one thing we had decided was we will not start till we have 80% of the top line of the industry. At that time, TCS was still not ready to join us. They were still debating whether to join or not join. We delayed forming NASSCOM till Mr. Kohli said yes. Then only NASSCOM took birth. So we had 80, because in those days, Tata's had 70% market share. So without them, we would have been just a small local association with no national impact. So we were very clear that without TCS, we are nobody, and we need to carry them with us. So when this Vittal's question came up, I gave him a list of 80% of the top line of the industry saying it can't be done. So Mr. Vittal said, oh, then he realized the difference between us and others. And that built the trust. And then he said, okay, what are your challenges? So we had some list of 100 things to be done. So he said, give me 3 things to work on. So we said, no, sir. And that was a pre-plan. We had met the day before as what we call NASSCOM Executive Council, and we had this game plan. And we told Mr. Vittal, sir, no, all we want is one thing from you. He said, what is it? You will consult us before you make any policy change, where the word software is. So that's all. You only want us to listen to you. We want you to be involved in terms of, and you will give us a recommendation. We said, yes. You don't want us to enforce your recommendation. We said, no, that is your call. We just want, give us an opportunity to express ourselves, because in those days, DOE, or as we used to, which is now MATI, was the nodal agency where all software related things would come for any policy change. So there was no question of, so that was an opportunity for us to go back and explain to him what that policy change means. Trust between the bureaucrats at a level where
Right.
they really felt that this industry is different. This NASSCOM is a different association. And I can, and that's how the changes in the policy making started happening. So that was the way I would say the NASSCOM took birth and started making changes.
So actually, so that is again, we have covered the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but you are doing many other things also. I see, you have worn many hats. You have been involved with organizations like Onward Technologies, TI, India Angel Network, Infinity Venture Fund, SIDBI. So in the last few decades, as you talk, there are many more things. So if you can just talk about your life, I mean, I don't know how you manage to balance so many things. So if that would be interesting.
I don't know. See, I was an entrepreneur, as I would say, in
Right.
USA, working for multinationals. And when I came back, became an entrepreneur, let's say you may want to call it. So I joined Hinditron as an entrepreneur, and we entered the software services business. Later on, we all partners separated in 91, and I started Onward. Now, at that time, when I started Onward, didn't want to compete with in those days, the big companies like TCS, Infosys, and Wipro. And going back to my COBOL example, I was visiting some customer in Andheri, where he had just recently installed a PC, personal computer. And he told me he can do COBOL program execution on the PC. So I wrote a small program, executed on that machine, and it worked. And I said, here is IBM 370, 360 costing crores, where you need COBOL, and here is the same thing you can now do on a PC. So that's where I think this particular technological change has a huge potential, and I entered business around PCs. So that's where we acquired agencies as a starting point from Autodesk, Novell, and many others. And within a very short period, I could convert my agency relationship with Novell into a 50-50 partnership. So Onward Novell was launched in 93, where first joint venture in India in the software arena, major joint venture you can call it. And Novell was the second largest personal software company at that point in time. And of course, the business, that time also there were many skeptics. I remember Professor Isaac of IIT Bombay saying, in India, we are very full of shortages. And so this networking will not work because it means sharing. Nobody will share in India because you had the chairs with the string attached to a table. So nobody will take away the chair. So from those days now, so I said exactly opposite my thinking is. By sharing the resources, more can participate. So I think there's a great future. So it all depends on how you look at it, glass half full or half empty. And network took off extremely well in India. At one point, we had 95% market share. But then, of course, Microsoft, as we have always understood, is offering competing technology free of charge. So how far Novell can keep continuing? So at some point, Novell did give up, because you can't continue with in some sense, against a bundled combination of products. And they entered the Unix game. They bought Linux as an operating system. Anyway, so that was the subscription model, not relevant for India. And I said, let me look at a new business. I had a handsome exit from Novel. But Novel was a great, successful joint venture. And I exited after 14 years of partnership with them. And so that is one side on Onward Store. Then I started Onward Technology, which again looked at the market and we saw the software, engineering software, which was running on expensive Unix workstation, again started becoming available on a PC. So I said, this is the market which can open up now. And that's where we entered engineering business, engineering services business. And it again, hugely successful business. In parallel, I had brought TIE into India. That was in 98, 99. 99 actually. Kanwal Rekhi was on my board of Onward Novel in the 90s. And he always used to tease me for saying that as NASSCOM, we are focused on services and you should be focused on your brain, which is the product game. And I said, Kanwal, tu yahan ke dhanda kar, then you'll know what the challenges are in the product game. So, but in 99, when the internet took off in USA, where Sridhar, who was KPMG MD in India, was from US, and he said, Harish, my landlord is now asking rental in stock options. I said, why does he want stock options? But then that's when I realized the internet wave, the way, or the dot-com boom, it had taken off in US. So maybe I felt India is missing out on that. So I brought TIE into India from that perspective in 99. And then that's where I learned the angel VC model, and that's where Infinity Venture was launched. And so on and so forth, continued my journey as an entrepreneur.
So all these, they have these networks have greatly benefited the startups. So if you can speak a bit about the startups also.
Sorry?
I said all these have all these angel network, TI and all, they have benefited the startups. So so you have been doing that, but the startup industry has just recently taken off.
Just started, yeah.
So if you can just speak maybe a bit about that.
So it's a great, huge potential for the startup world.
Yeah.
I believe that in my book, which I released, The Maverick Effect, I talked about my vision for India to become Soneki Chidiya version 2.0. India needs to create million technopreneurs, because the combination of multiple technologies has potential to solve literally every problem of India, from healthcare to education to clean energy to whatnot. So I would like to say that entrepreneurship unleashed using these technologies in the country. Has an extremely bright future for startups.
Yeah, so now that you have mentioned the Maverick Effect, I'd like to ask about that, because the Maverick Effect was really received well by the industry. Even at Dataquest, we reviewed it and we got a great, feedback from our readers. So if you can just tell something, how you ended up writing it, and for someone who would like wanting to buy the book, what are the highlights about the Maverick Effect, and how you had started telling that NASSCOM was started from your home, and yeah, the idea of the Maverick Effect, and how it came about, how the market reacted to it, and finally the highlights for readers who would be willing to buy the book.
4 years back. Okay, as I said before, I've been in the industry for a long time, so I've seen the industry change over the last 40 years, how it has evolved. I have seen how India has changed over the last 40 years. I have seen how NASSCOM has evolved. NASSCOM may be 33 years old, started, and then where it is today. So I have some sort of front row view of all the changes that were happening. Now, so when I used to ask people about how, let's say, India changed, and the answer would be 91 reforms. Somebody will say something else, and there was no real answer I was getting why India changed. Then you ask, in my view, I believe very strongly that it is IT industry that changed India. the fortunes of billion people. Now, then the questions were how IT industry change. Again, somebody will say 91 reforms. Somebody will say Y2K gave us a push. And some other reasons. A government was not monitoring your industry and all that. And I disagree with all. I mean, they all played some role. I'm not even denying it. To me, the government was hand in hand working with us together as a partner. There was no question of government. Not. It is just that I believe that we built NASSCOM as an independent, neutral, transparent, trusted platform. And because of that platform, the government and the industry were working closely. So there was no need for the government or policymakers to come up with complex mechanisms to monitor our industry. The trust was there. So I believe very strongly it is IT industry that has changed India. And I believe on top of that, it is NASSCOM and the IT industry, the symbiotic relationship between the two has really changed the IT industry. So what is the secret sauce of NASSCOM that allowed it to have this happen? As you know, the industry has grown 30% compounded over the last 30 years. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala used to say that if you get 18% compounded, you are a king. At 21%, you are an emperor. And here industry has delivered 30%. Now, if you look at some numbers, over the last 20 years, IT industry has earned $1 trillion of foreign exchange. Just imagine in 91, India was bankrupt on foreign exchange. Who earned the foreign exchange over the last, other than the one was the remittances from Indians abroad, and second was the big chunk continuously, in which kept on increasing over the last 30 years, is our industry. Now, today we earn more than what Saudi Arabia earns. The difference is in Saudi Arabia, money goes in one account. In India, to thousands of companies, it goes in millions of accounts in it, which has ended up creating a new middle class. Our industry is now 5.3 million jobs. And that's what ended up creating a new middle class. Because today industry employs 5.3 million engineers, who in turn employs 4 to 5 additional people in the society, who in turn, as a family of 4. So we actually, our industry today supports twice the population of UK. Now, if you look at the meritocracy, today IIT Bombay's Gardner's son became software engineer because what he knew, not because he knew somebody else to get a job. Today, industry employs 37% women. Again, they all got the jobs because of what they knew. And today, this women earning high disposable income, just imagine the change they're going to bring in the houses that they're living in, the way they're going to bring up their children, the way they're going to contribute to the local community, the way they will change the work environment. To me, a silent revolution is happening in the background, in the country. Now, when you look at the corporate governance, for example, India was not a trusted country from the investment perspective. But again, our industry took the lead in terms of corporate governance. Our quarterly reports, annual reports, and the transparency, which is following a world-class standard of governance in reporting this. So again, that started building trust in India, and the FDI money started flowing in the country. So that has been a massive contribution of the IT industry. But how did the IT industry grow? So that's where my book came in about. Okay, sorry. So, but now I believe very strongly it is NASSCOM's unique role of what I call Maverick Effect that made that happen. But nobody knows about it. And there is a African proverb which says, if the lions had historians, the stories of hunting would not have glorified the hunters. So if no one has told the story of what NASSCOM contribution is, I don't want to blame anybody. And I said, I'll take it on myself to write that story. And so that's where I got the idea of writing the book, and then Maverick Effect. And Maverick Effect means like let's say you take all the fiercely competing companies, their heads, be it TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all the small companies, working together, keeping India first, having consensus, and their creative juices flowing to solve an industry problem is what the major differentiator is. When MNCs they saw our work on the on-site or let's say body shopping happening, and they were so happy seeing the quality of work. And whatever offshore we were doing through sending floppies back and forth, they were really impressed with the lower cost, getting high quality work done. So they said we would like to set up 100% own MNCs in India, but we'll do back office operations. And this is a confidential work which we are not going to give to a third-party service provider anywhere. So when it came to NASSCOM, should we accept or not accept that proposal? Should we promote and tell the government, allow them to come in or not? Now the natural reaction in other industry associations was always to protect. They're not here, we're happy. Why allow them to come? And because there was a fear that they'll come, they'll take away our people by paying twice the salary, 3 times the salary. There was a fear that under the garb of back office operation, they'll take existing work on their side. So why should we allow? It's a great protection for us. But on the other hand, because we created an environment at NASSCOM where as an independent, neutral, trusted platform over the last few years of experience, people started contributing. Their creative juices were flowing in to solve this issue. So at that point, somebody said, but if they come, we have huge benefits because all of our best practices are homegrown practices. We will learn the global best practices. Plus, as we have a $300 billion pie, out of which only accessible to us is 1 or 2 billion. If we build confidence and trust with this MNCs, India is ease of doing business, and here are the companies ready to join you, treat you as an equal. Maybe more and more segments will open up for us. So there's a win-win for everybody. Still, we were not convinced. At that point, I don't know who, but someone said that who is us? Ask that question. And then we came to a conclusion that whoever develops human capital of India is us. And who doesn't is not us. Even in an Indian company, if they're not developing human capital, they're not us. So with this MNCs coming to India fitted very well with that formula. So again, we went to ask everybody, because we went to the finance ministry saying you allow 100% ownership. But before that, we asked everybody again, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, and all the players, are you agreeing? Are you letting your best competitor, worst, whatever you want to call it, to come into the country? Everyone said yes, agreed. And then we went to the government, proposed that. At that time also, bureaucrats' first question was, तुम किसके दलाल हो? वापस देश को बेचने आ गए. But we were ready with the data, facts, analysis. And that time, Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister, and he agreed and allowed MNCs to come to India. Now that simple decisions, we had no resources, we're very meager in terms of very small comparatively, but it is the creative juices flowing in allowed us to come up with a solution. Today, that particular segment, Sunil, you'll be surprised, we have 1,800 R&D centers in India employing 1.2 million engineers. And not only that, many of them are now representing at their parent companies board level, co-creating future for their parent companies. And it's a continue to grow. They continue to now high-end development work in the country. So that I call it a Maverick Effect. When fierce competitors come sit together around a table and take an industry issue and solve it. That's the simplest answer would have been protect ourselves, don't allow them to come in. But here, that's a Maverick mindset, which is different than other associations. Or that is the secret sauce of NASSCOM, I call it. And so I must give enough examples of this collaborate and compete, keeping India first, being consensus driven, creative juices flowing and solving the problem has to be talked about. And it reached a stage where 10, 15 years back, China wanted to compete with India, seeing India's success in tech services, creating jobs in so many different locations. And so China said, why not we also enter the tech services business? And So they appointed foresters to come up with a master plan how China can become number one in tech services business. And the story we heard was that John McCarthy, who was the CEO of Forrester at that time, he told them, you cannot compete with China, or you cannot compete with India till you create NASSCOM equivalent association. Is I have not seen anywhere in the world, IBM, Capgemini, Accenture, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all fierce competitors sitting around a table and solving the industry issues. You need to create similar environment to take on the Indian IT industry. So these are the stories in the book which I talk about why NASSCOM is a different association model and how it can, if this model can be used in any industry, anywhere in the world, need not be only India, it can change the industry's fortunes dramatically. Because now you are solving problems at ecosystem level. I call it, we as an entrepreneur like to have exponential growth of our own company. But same creativity, if you use outside in building the ecosystem will grow exponentially. As a result, not only we all grow, it allows thousands of new companies to take birth also. That's the beauty of that model of ecosystem. To give another example, like NASSCOM, at one point we literally wrote IT policies of 20. The first draft was prepared by us for 20 states. Now imagine when the next wave of technology came, we had 20 states ready with the basic raw material of people's skills for industry to leverage. So how do you create 100,000 engineers? Let's say today also, if you were to create deep science based 100,000 engineers, from where will you create? But when you have 20 states working in parallel, and luckily there's healthy competition, so that allows that phenomenal tech resource to be developed in the country, which again allows the industry to grow. When industry grows, industry uses its best practices, which comes back, and we, NASSCOM as a platform, share it with other companies. So it's a symbiotic relationship between the industry and the association that gave us this compounded growth. And not only growth, it changed the fortunes of, I call it, 1 billion people.
So that's a very novel take. You have a very novel take on that, and I have really enjoyed like talking to you. It's been a very momentous journey I've gone through with you from 60s to the 2010s, and you have led a very fascinating life. So I think like at this stage, we can look to the future, and you're the best person to look to the future, because I have never seen so much optimism about India. This is the first time people are saying that, after 30, 40 years, India will be the largest, second largest, third largest economy, depending on which person you look. We are going to be great in tech. First time,
Correct.
the IT services company are doing well. Startup industry is a strong third. The government is interested in digital. So I am seeing a lot of optimism. So I'd like your take. All of us are looking to India 2047, 100 years after independence, to be a tech superpower. So are we on the right track? What more needs to be done? So I'd like your insight on all of this.
We have a long way to go, first of all.
Okay.
I'm an optimist. I have seen India, which was snake charmers country, third world country, bankrupt on foreign exchange, to exactly what you just described, where India is today. And we have overcome massive ups and downs in the challenges that were in front of us. As the ingenuity of the people, leaders, everyone together working collaboratively and solving it. So I think that spirit will be maintained. I don't see there's no reason, and I'm hoping that more and more industry associations follow NASSCOM equivalent, or the customize it, personalize it to their, and allow ecosystems in each of their industry segment to grow and build. However, having said that, I do see some serious challenges going forward.
Okay.
First is the cultural transformation we need in the country. We have I call it evil axis of Lala, Neta, Jola, Gunda, all of them together. We have to break that nexus.
Right.
If you don't break it, as you know, I call that an invisible bus that kills millions of people, innocent people on the way.
Right.
So that corruption, that corrupt access has to be broken as a one challenge going forward.
Right.
Similarly, we need vibrant democracy. We need a very strong, powerful judiciary. We need robust enforcement. All that is again starting point for India to emerge as an innovative tech superpower.
Right.
See, if my innovation is not going to get protected, why would I do it?
Right.
I would rather flip my company, do it, and get a protection outside, and not worry about India.
Right.
If India wants India, we need to fix that.
Right.
Then we have many cultural issues like failure.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kohli gets out 0 in 2 or 3 matches at his home. Everybody goes and for
Yeah.
what?
Right.
Why we are not ready to accept the failure?
Right.
As we all know in our industry, failing and getting started and again failing again start is the way of life.
Right.
I think failure itself is a wrong. To me, why is a failure defined? Why is a success opposite of failure? Is the English definition problem?
Right.
I wish there's a different word, and then we don't accept, say, failure meaning bangdi penke you lost or whatever.
Right.
So that is another. So there's major cultural change, hard work, not to protect. I mean, we must compete with the best in the world in every value of, let's say. So all that is required to be done at one level.
Right.
The second, India's problems are deep and dark, as we all know. That so $2,000 per capita. I mean, we need to create 90 million jobs over the next 10 years. So
Right.
it's a huge challenge in front of us, apart from other issues.
Right.
So again, I have in my chapter 14 in the book, I've identified all the structural problems of India as I saw it.
Okay.
We need to overcome for India to become a not only tech superpower, but I call it Sone ki Chidiya version 2.0.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for those insights. And once again, congratulations on getting the Lifetime Achievement Award. And what I like is I have talked to you, you seem as fresh as ever. And it is like you're starting now. So I'm sure we will expect a lot more from you, and we look forward to your more insights in our road to 2047.
Most welcome. Most happy to share my views. Yes,
Yeah.
certainly.